Hello again, everyone, and thanks once again for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather on this 8th day of June 2020. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, fire danger graphic shows an increase there out west, especially along the Seward Peninsula, the Nulato Hills, and up into looks like the Selawik Valley area, possibly Kobuk Valley, and also in the Noatak Valley out to the northwest coast and the coastal areas of the Yukon Delta. Otherwise, swath that received rain in between that zone and the higher fire danger over the upper Yukon Valley area along the Yukon River there over toward just north of Eagle. Still has an extreme area there along the river. And then high to very high fire danger extending down into the greater Fairbanks area, but not quite over to Tanana. And moving on, record rainfall, Juneau and Haines on Sunday yesterday, with forecast office getting over an inch of precipitation. That broke the 2/3 of an inch amount that fell in 2014 on the same date, 2007. And the airport picking up 3/4 of an inch, and that broke a record that goes back to 1962. That was probably the more impressive one of the 5 here, since some of these databases aren't that old. It's like I believe the forecast office doesn't go much before 2014, maybe back to 2004. Anyway, Haines 3700ths, that broke 1/10 of an inch that fell in 2012. Next shot here showing the sunset up in the Fairbanks area, midnight Sunday sunset last night. Pretty nice conditions there, and may see a repeat tonight of the exact scene you're looking at here. And the forecast for the next 5 days for the Fairbanks area, the greater Fairbanks area, Tanana Valley, mid and upper Tanana Valley. This also applies up to the Yukon Flats. Mostly sunny, temperatures in the mid to upper 70s, overnight lows in the lower 50s. So really nice conditions, maybe a 20 to 25% chance of some thunderstorm activity each day, as there usually is this time of year. And moving on to hazardous weather graphic, no watches, warnings, or advisories out anywhere around the state for the next 24 hours. So taking a look at satellite imagery. System there dropped it across, slowly moving across the eastern Aleutians, excuse me, and the Alaska Peninsula. Kept it wet, but rain diminishing this afternoon for the Fox Islands and Alaska Peninsula, with winds a little stronger than I thought they were going to be, with gusts of 40 miles an hour out of the north, both at St. George Island and at Nikolsky, while 45-mile-an-hour wind gusts hit Unalaska earlier today. Those are all dying down slowly this afternoon. Another system out to the west pushing rain into the area from about Amchitka or Kiska over towards Shimia, with a little bit of a pickup in the winds there. Otherwise, a lot of moisture over the southeast interior. That's where the heaviest rainfall amounts were today. Over the Copper River Basin, sliding on down into Prince William Sound, northeast Prince William Sound, and the Madanuska Valley, with amounts of Gulkana, 12 hours, picking up about 2/3 of an inch of precipitation. Lighter rainfall amounts over the Panhandle today. Juneau only picking up about 1/100 of an inch, and a couple other locations maybe about 1/10 of an inch. So looking at, it was drier, but still a lot of clouds and a few showers around today. And mostly sunny skies up all over the Yukon Flats. Temperatures 78 degrees both at Beaver and 7 Mile this afternoon at mid-afternoon, and some sunshine also over the Yukon Delta, as well as Nunivak Island, the southern Seward Peninsula. Otherwise, areas of fog and low clouds all along the Arctic coast down into the Bering Strait and over areas of the Bering Sea. And you can see some showers over the Kenai Peninsula. Thunderstorms picking up again along the eastern interior and also along the southern slopes of the Brooks Range area and along the Alaska Range. And even some isolated thunderstorm strikes reported out over the southwest interior. And showers over the Panhandle with surface ridging, not all that strong, but up along the North Gulf Coast there. And generally kind of just a partly to mostly cloudy day for the Panhandle, or for Kodiak Island, with dry conditions, and that low pulling off to the southeast, but some precipitation on the decrease over the Fox Islands. And you'll see tonight that's gone completely. Maybe some clearing for Unmac, Unalaska, and the western Alaska Peninsula, possibly. But low clouds and fog with high pressure dominating the Bering Sea will be quite extensive through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, all the way up and around the Arctic coast into the North Slope. A few evening showers there for the western North Slope and the DeLong Mountain areas. Thunderstorms back on the decrease and rainfall diminishing, becoming more showery for the Copper River Basin area on down to into the Matanuska Valley, where Palmer had about a third of an inch of rain today, and still a chance of showers for the Cook Inlet area. Should be dry. Showers end for the Panhandle, maybe some clearing. Same thing for the North Gulf Coast. Wind and rain on the increase there for the western Aleutians. And rain about to move into the Panhandle, southern Panhandle. Will tomorrow. It does spread over at least the southern third of the southeast coast. Better chance of sunshine, though, up to the north from Juneau on up to Haines, Skagway. Yakutat looking pretty good. Entire North Gulf Coast, not too bad. Prince William Sound, mostly cloudy, but lose the rain. Drier over the Copper River Basin. Thunderstorms developing along the trough there from the Alaska Range and 40-mile country. Back on down into northeast Bristol Bay and maybe the southern slopes of the Brooks Range once again. Otherwise, the western part of the state, Kuskokwim Valley, Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, partly and mostly sunny, Seward Peninsula, northwest part of the state again, but low clouds and fog quite extensive along the Arctic coast and through the Bering Strait, with light winds and several high pressure centers over the central Bering Sea, keeping winds light. So IFR pretty widespread from the Bering Strait and the Chukchi Sea all the way down, linking up with that moisture and possible gale force winds there for the Aleutians on the northern, or associated in advance of that front, with the low staying down to the south there, but rain spreading into Adak with possible gale force wind gusts. And showers possible, mostly cloudy, cooler for Kodiak tomorrow, and fog, low clouds in the Gulf of Alaska. Outlook for Wednesday. Another front tries to push some moisture up into the southern southeast coast again late in the afternoon on Wednesday, with showers to the north toward Juneau, ending as you get up Lynn Canal. And the main rain will stay over the Queen Charlottes, with the main low center staying to the southwest of the Queen Charlottes. Weakening front spreads rain, fog, and drizzle. A little bit of a pickup in the winds, but definitely not gales for the Fox Islands, but breezier back out over the far western Aleutians. High pressure beginning to weaken and push off to the east a little bit there. So low clouds and fog, light winds continue right up to the southwest coast. And the Seward Peninsula, or the Bering Strait, western Seward Peninsula, may get clipped by that weak trough swinging northeastward there, actually spreading eastward associated with that 1,002 millibar low over the Russian Far East. And again, thunderstorms possible in the afternoon, early evening along the Alaska Range from the Wrangell Mountains, and also the possibly the Brooks Range and northwest interior areas. But mostly sunny, temperatures back 70s, maybe pushing 80 for the eastern interior areas, and mostly sunny day for the Kuskokwim, lower Yukon River Valley areas, as well as the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta into Bristol Bay. Chance of showers all around Iliamna, but should be a partly sunny day for south central Alaska. Maybe an afternoon shower trying to develop over the Kenai Peninsula. Lows tonight, 30 to 35 for the Arctic coast, North Slope, and upper 20s there, Shishmaref and on up to Point Hope. Otherwise, lower 50s, Fairbanks into the upper Yukon Valley, down in toward McGrath and Nikolai, then cooling off into the upper 30s for the Yukon Delta and Nunivak Island. Lower 40s for the Pribilofs, Aleutians, and the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, mid to upper 40s over southern Alaska and the Panhandle. That'll be followed by highs tomorrow again in the lower to mid 70s, we'll call it, over the central and northeast interior. And 70s pretty much restricted north and west of the north and northwest of the Alaska Range, but still well into the 60s for Bristol Bay. And then 50s to lower 60s, south central Alaska, warmest in the Susitna Valley, and a little bit of recovery in the temperatures of the Copper River Basin over today, say 55, pushing 60, and some more 60s showing up over the southeast coast, and then highs in the 40s over the Bering Sea, and normal mid 40s to lower 50s for the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, pushing up into the upper 50s, near 40 for St. Lawrence Island. Lows for Wednesday morning. Upper 20s again, northern Seward Peninsula after that high at Shishmare forecast tomorrow of just freezing. So back into the upper 20s at some point in the overnight period. And then lower 30s for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, but milder over the Tanana Valley and upper Yukon Valley with lower 50s, otherwise 40s everywhere else. Highs Wednesday afternoon, rebounding, maybe some lower 70s, the Sitna Valley, Anchorage area, and the Kenai Peninsula, as well as the Copper River Basin. Otherwise, well into the 70s, central and northeast interior, and 60s on the...
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, IFR, Arctic coast, North Slope, up to the Brooks Range, maybe some marginal VFR spilling south of the mountains there. But IFR through the Bering Strait covering just about all of the Bering Sea, all of the Aleutians, right up into Bristol, Togiak, and Kuskokwim Bays. Also IFR, South Central Alaska into the Gulf, and VFR for the Panhandle and from the Eagle area and the Porcupine Rivers right on down the Yukon River Valley. VFR continues, it comes a little more expansive down to the eastern North Gulf Coast, and some marginal VFR slipping on in to the southwest panhandle of Prince of Wales Island with IFR up along the coast by late afternoon. Otherwise, marginal VFR, North Slope Arctic coast, and staying IFR, Bering Sea and the Aleutians, and to a lesser extent, Bristol Bay, marginal VFR for Togiak Bay and along the southwest coast. Wednesday morning, IFR, eastern and central Beaufort Sea coast with marginal VFR to, and in some cases, a little south of the Brooks Range. But from the Noatak Valley on down the western interior, looking pretty good. Kuskokwim Valley VFR, marginal VFR along and east of the Alaska Range, and maybe the Talkeetnas, possibly the Wrangels. Otherwise, IFR Kodiak Island eastward to just off the southeast coast, staying VFR there. No change in the Bering Sea, IFR, same thing for the Aleutians. And St. Lawrence Island maybe a little bit, looking kind of marginal. And by the afternoon, though, back to IFR, all of the Bering Sea, all of the Aleutians IFR, and that extends right on up into Bristol Bay, marginal VFR along the southwest coast and the northwest coast. Central Arctic coast, IFR on the east side. Otherwise, on the North Slope becoming VFR, and all the interior Alaska VFR, maybe some marginal stuff still over Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula, Kachemak Bay. But for the most part, Kodiak Island, Fognak Island, VFR, and the Panhandle, VFR, eastern North Gulf Coast as well. And for passes, Anatuvik, marginal VFR, as well as Adigan, marginal VFR at times for both those passes. And Lake Clark and Merrill starting out marginal, but I think it'll be VFR late morning and into the afternoon. Chance of thunderstorms on the western entrances. Rainy VFR, chance of thunderstorm west side. And windy VFR, risk of a thunderstorm. And Isabel, same forecast, VFR with a chance of a thunderstorm, mainly north side of the mountains. And Mentasta, VFR. Tanita, starting out IFR and then becoming marginal VFR in the afternoon. Hopefully, maybe see some VFR, but I wouldn't count on it. Portage, IFR becoming marginal. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, east central interior there along the Yukon River, 8,000 feet. Dropping to 4,000 feet from the Alaska Range, south central Alaska, northern Panhandle, and the Gulf. 6,000 northern Bering Sea, in southward to the central Aleutians. Really all of the Bering Sea about 6,000 feet, 4,000 feet along the western Arctic coast. And icing. Next front, bringing possibly considerable moderate rime icing in toward the west central Aleutians with slowly pushing eastward and a little to the north. Otherwise, some rime icing possibly slipping into the southern Panhandle and up to the central coast of the isolated moderate rime variety. And otherwise, over the interior, areas of mixed icing, freezing levels say to roughly 16,000 feet. And for the jet stream, upper level low over the Seward Peninsula, and then one southwest of the western Aleutians. So we got a 120 knot jet just coming up and grazing the central Aleutians, diving back to the southeast, then splits again with 170 knot branch coming up across the Queen Charlotte's and Dixon entrance, with staying east of the forecast area. And fourth, 9,000 feet. Got pretty good winds there with that storm southwest of the Queen Charlotte, but 35 knots, not quite reaching the southern southeast coast. But you'll see an increase in the winds in the afternoon, and a little breezy, but nothing serious with that Aleutian or the low southwest of Shemya. 3,000 feet, same pattern, a little stronger on those winds though, up to 40 knots off Prince of Wales Island coast by tomorrow afternoon. 40 knot winds coming up toward Adak. And for the turbulence, occasional moderate chop for Adak Island, and light to isolated moderate chop for the southern southeast coast, especially along the outer coastline.
Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service with another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining me today are not just one, but two people, both with the last name Stevens, which is even more fun, but no relation. We have Eric Stevens from Dehne and George Stevens, who is a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Did I get that right?
Yep.
Awesome. And today you guys brought a really cool toy, or I should say tool, with you. It's a sandbox, but why are you guys working on a sandbox?
Well, it's part of our senior design project, and we were approached by AKwx to build this for them. They had a proof of concept that they developed about a year ago, I think, and they wanted a more robust version that they could pack onto a plane and take places, and it's a handy learning tool for kids and adults.
So you're a mechanical engineering student. You've built a traveling sandbox for the experimental program to stimulate competitive research, EPSCoR, and Dehne's facilitated this. But why do we need a traveling sandbox?
Well, the prototype was such a big hit that they decided they wanted another one, actually two, that they could that would be easier to travel with. You know, possibly marketable even.
Okay, so this is a traveling sandbox that's got a lot of bits and pieces and a computer hooked up to it. What is the computer doing with the sand?
The computer actually uses a Kinect sensor to read the topography of the sand or the shape of the sand, and then the computer translates that into information which it projects using a projector onto the sand, showing topographical lines and which is representative of the shape of the sand.
Okay, so this is a live mapping tool?
Yeah. It's interactive. As you're moving your hands through it, it is actively following and changing the lines to fit what you're doing.
That sounds like something I could have in my backyard.
Yep.
It'd be a lot of fun. So you guys had to change the design a little bit to make this more Alaska-fied, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, how'd you do that?
Well, the original was made out of basically lumber and Simpson strong tie type stuff, and we rebuilt it to make it lighter and basically more transportable. We can pack it down to a fairly small size, and it can be loaded onto a plane and flown anywhere in the state.
Which you guys did today. And you have plans to take this in other places of Alaska, right?
Yep, we're actually going to be headed down to Homer with it later today.
Okay, very good. Eric, how does this fit into science learning around Alaska?
Well, you know what? I think it is a tool and it is a toy. And it brings out a smile from an 8-year-old and the smile from a 48-year-old with that inner 8-year-old wanting to get out. The sandbox, it's an interactive learning tool that teaches us how topography in the 3 dimensions is related to, say, a 2-dimensional map. More about that later. Just like George was saying, it's got a Kinect sensor, not just for video games anymore. It can sense out the lay of the land there, feeds that information in the computer. Computer identifies that, sends a signal to a projector to send topographic lines to map over that lumpy ground. So you get a 3-dimensional topo map out of it. And my favorite thing about it, this is the thing that stops people at the trade show, they stop at your booth and don't leave, is that you run your hand through that sandbox and it responds in real time. It remaps the topography as you get to be Mr. Tectonic Plate Drifter there. You can make things how you want. Well, what if we made a really high mountain here and a low valley there, and the lines adjust to what you did? It's a learning tool because it shows you that connection between these 2-dimensional topo lines and what's really out in Alaska. And Alaska's a place with all kinds of topography. You know, we're from the Great Plains, where topo maps tend to be just like blank pieces of paper, But Alaska is particularly gifted in this regard, and this tool helps us, I think, learn more about our state, really.
Absolutely. And so this is going to enhance STEM learning, the science, technology, engineering, and math, in many different locations around Alaska. Then this would be something that kids and teachers can get their hands on.
It sure is. And I mentioned the it's like flypaper at a booth that, or at the Science Potpourri when we had Greg's original version of this sandbox, and that one was made out of scraps of wood, and it was a prototype. But even that one, before it had some of the refinements that George and crew have made for this newer, upscaled, maybe a 2.0 version of the sandbox, even that one was so attractive to people. It just demonstrated that this has potential to be a learning tool, an outreach tool, an education tool that now is portable and can go places in Alaska. Of course, there's only one sandbox, can't be everywhere at once, but hopefully it gets out there, gets the word out about EPSCoR and what science is being done here for Alaskans.
All right, that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to get my hands in the sand and try this out for myself. We're going to demonstrate this here in our next segment of Alaska Weather Facts, but before we go, we want to remind you that EPSCoR, which is a new acronym for me now, but I'm going to remember this because you can follow them on Facebook and Twitter, and I invite you to do that. Alaska EPSCoR is also something that facilitates science learning at the University of Alaska around the state, and that stands for Experimental Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. So check that out, and make sure you tune in tomorrow because we're going to have the next version where we actually get our hands in the sand and check out how this works and demonstrates that topography. So for now, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with this edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you again next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Not much different from yesterday, but still diminishing of what's left of the ice in Norton Sound, and also of the heavier ice up there on the northeast part of St. Lawrence Island, and that open water area is still pushing farther north each day past the Bering Strait into the southeast Chukchi Sea. And for the coastal water forecasts, in the afternoon, look for a pretty good increase in the easterly winds on the south coast, coming up to 30 knots, seas building to 10 to 12 feet. And also in the afternoon, small craft advisories to Clarence Strait southeast, increasing to 25 knots, seas building to 5 feet. Lighter winds as you head north, northeast 15, Stevens Passage, north at 10 for Lynn Canal, and north to northeast, 10 to 20 knots on the north coast with 4 to 6 foot seas. Small craft advisories for much of the coastline on Wednesday out of the east and southeast. Southeast on the south coast with 12-foot seas and 25 knot sustained winds, but the extreme north coast there near Yakutat, north at 15. Southeast 20 Clarence Strait, 15 knots with 3-foot seas for Stevens Passage, and variable to south at 10 for Lynn Canal. Cook Inlet, south winds 10 knots, south of Forlanzo, 15 knots with 3-foot seas, southeast 15 Kamishak Bay, and variable winds at 10 knots for the North Gulf Coast, Barren Islands, and Prince William Sound with seas only 2 to 3 feet at the most. And the outlook for Wednesday, north at 15 or variable to north for Prince William Sound, staying light windwise, seas slight, southwest at 10 for the Middleton Island area with 6-foot seas, and then north 10 on the west side, back around to the southwest at 10, both for Kamishak Bay, and maybe 15 knots for Kachemak Bay. Southwest 10 for the Barren Islands, and south to southwest breeze at 10 knots with 2-foot seas for Cook Inlet. Kodiak Island, southwest winds 15 knots tomorrow, 3 to 4-foot seas. West 15 for the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay. Seas not bad, 3 feet on the Bering Sea side to 4 feet south side. And then for Wednesday, west-northwest 15 knots, 4 to 5-foot seas for the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, west at 15, and west 10 for Kodiak Island. And for the Aleutians, for Fox Islands, southwest 10 knots, seas 3 to 4 feet, and then easterlies 20 to 30 knots for the central Aleutians, strongest on the south side of the islands, and 30 knot winds there for the western Aleutians out of the east, and seas at 11 feet. And then we'll see some gales on Wednesday on the west from Kiska to Shemya, north 30 knots, but gale warnings out from Amchitka all the way to Unimak Island, Nikolsky, south to southeast, 35 knots sustained with seas 12 to 14 feet, and southeast 30 knots around Alaska Island with seas building 6 to 8 feet. And for the southwest coast, north to northwest 15 to 20 knots with 3 to 4 foot seas, northwest 15 for the Pribilofs, northwest 20 for St. Lawrence Island. Those will become lighter and more westerly for the island there on Wednesday, with seas coming down to about 3 feet or so, and northwest along the coast 10 to 15 knots, Pribilofs east 20 knots, east 10 knots for St. Matthew Island. Up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, light winds, northwest 5 to 10, that's about it. In the central and west side, northerlies at 10 knots, seas in ice-free areas at 2 feet. And small craft advisories, though, from Cape Thompson down to Wales, north wind sustained at 25 knots with 4-foot seas. Outlook for Wednesday, that swings around, diminishes, south 15 now from Wales to Cape Thompson. And for the western Arctic coast, east 15, central coast, southeast at 10, and then for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east and northeast 15 knots, and again seas in the ice-free areas 2 to 3 feet. For tonight, low clouds and fog, pretty widespread along the Arctic coast into the North Slope, and with high pressure that'll extend right down, cover much of the Bering Sea to the Alaska Peninsula, especially Bristol Bay. Showers diminish over the interior, and rain chances increase with wind over the western Aleutians. And then tomorrow, rain increases and slowly spreads northward over the southern panhandle, but drier and maybe some sun to the north, as well as the North Gulf Coast. Afternoon showers in the Kenai Peninsula. I don't think there'll be any thunderstorms. They'll be mostly the Talkeetnas and Alaska Range area. And wind and rain spread into the central Aleutians. And then the gale force winds with that 989 millibar low in the forecast for the central and western Aleutians, as that front spreads small craft advisory winds and rain into the Fox Islands. Otherwise, afternoon thunderstorms, temperatures in the sunny areas in the 70s.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.